If you walk into the home of a Gen X man late at night, you may find a strange kind of silence. The garage light is still on. The workshop is organized. A coffee cup sits beside a half-finished project. The house has gone to sleep, but he is still awake, quietly carrying the thoughts he never says out loud. Some people see this man and assume he is emotionally distant. They see his independence as stubbornness. They wonder why he rarely asks for help, why he carries pressure quietly, and why his first instinct during a crisis is to say, "I'll handle it." But to understand him, you have to travel back 4 decades. A black VHS tape slides into a machine with a heavy clunk. The television comes alive with a blue glow. A boy sits alone in a dark room while the rest of the house is somewhere else. His parents are working. His responsibilities are already beginning. The world feels uncertain, and on the screen are not perfect heroes. They are wounded survivors. For many Gen X boys, those movies did not create their identity. They recognized something already forming inside them. They gave a language to endurance, independence, and surviving a world that did not always promise comfort. Gen X became known as the generation of latchkey children. They learned to make their own meals, solve their own problems, and spend hours without supervision. So it is no surprise that they connected with characters like Mad Max and Snake Plissken. These men were not chosen heroes. They were tired, skeptical, and abandoned by the systems around them. They survived because they adapted. For a young boy sitting in an empty house, there was something comforting about that message. Being alone did not mean being powerless, but every survival strategy carries a cost. The child who learns to rely on himself can become the adult who believes he must carry everything himself. That same strength that makes him dependable can make him silent when he is suffering. The greatest heroes of that era were not men who never broke. They were men who kept moving after they were broken. MacReady from The Thing was frightened and exhausted. The characters of dystopian cinema were often ordinary people facing impossible situations. That is what made them believable. Gen X men did not admire them because they were superhuman. They admired them because they proved courage could exist alongside fear. Modern psychology suggests that the stories we deeply connect with during our formative years can influence how we interpret ourselves, our struggles, and our values. Many men carried that lesson into adulthood. When the family faced hardship, they stood firm. When careers became difficult, they endured. When life demanded sacrifice, they answered. But sometimes they forgot that even the strongest survivor needs someone beside him. The man who can walk through fire often struggles to admit that the flames hurt. The world of the 1980s was filled with uncertainty. The Cold War, changing economies, and films like Blade Runner, RoboCop, and The Terminator imagined futures where technology and institutions could fail humanity. These stories encouraged a generation to question appearances. They learned to trust actions more than promises. They respected competence over attention. They valued loyalty over popularity. That skepticism became armor, and armor is useful during battle. The mistake is forgetting to remove it when the war is over. A man who never allows himself to be vulnerable eventually becomes a prisoner of the very shield that once protected him. Many Gen X men express love differently. They may not write long emotional messages. They may not announce every feeling to the world. Instead, they drive across town when someone needs help. They repair what is broken. They keep their promises. Their love is visible in ordinary actions repeated over decades. That is not emotional emptiness. It is a different language of devotion. Yet wisdom in the later chapters of life asks something new, not to abandon strength, not to forget resilience, but to understand that the greatest warriors know when it is safe to put their weapons down. The strongest man in the room is not always the one who carries everything alone. Sometimes it is the man who finally allows himself to be known. Imagine that room again. The night is quiet. The movie finishes. The screen turns to gray static. For a brief moment, the boy sees his own reflection staring back at him. He does not know the losses he will experience. He does not know the responsibilities he will carry. He does not know how many times he will have to stand strong when everyone else depends on him. But he learned something from those old films. Not that he would never be afraid, not that he would never be hurt, but that he could continue moving forward. Those movies did not make him a hero. They simply showed him the kind of man he hoped to become. And now, decades later, his final lesson is this: the survivor who learned how to stand alone must also learn that he no longer has to. The armor can rest, the shield can come down, and the people who love him can finally see the man behind it. Stay steady.